I did my best to notice when the call came down the line. Up to the platform of surrender, I was brought but I was kind. Sometimes I get nervous when I see an open door. Close your eyes, clear your heart. You gotta cut the cord. Are we human? Or are we dancer? The sign is vital. My hands are cold, and I'm on my knees looking for the answer. Are we human? Or are we dancer? Pay my respects to grace and virtue. Send my condolences to good. Give my regards to soul and romance. They always did the best they could. So long to devotion. You taught me everything I know. Wave goodbye, wish me well. You gotta let me go. Are we human? Or are we dancer? The sign is vital. My hands are cold, and I'm on my knees looking for the answer. Are we human? Or are we dancer? Will your system be alright when you dream of home tonight? There's no message we're receiving. Let me know if you're still beating. Are we human? Or are we dancer? A sign is vital. My hands are cold, and I'm on my knees looking for the answer. Are we human? Or are we dancer? Are we human? Or are we dancer? A sign is vital. My hands are cold, and I'm on my knees looking for the answer. Are we human? Or are we dancer?
Welcome to Collective. It's a few minutes after 5. It's Sunday night, which means it is time for our live liturgy. We did have a liturgy last week. It was not live, it was pre-recorded. Hope you all enjoyed that. We're going to get right into it. We got a bunch going on tonight. So you can sign up for the weekly email. You can get connected at wearecollectivechurch.com. If you're online, hopefully you're already chatting with us. Hey Dan, hey Wendy, hey Jim. Heather is with us. Freddie is here with us. Kenny's here. He'll be here in just a few minutes to participate. The regular rundown. We have this week yoga. Yoga is coming Monday, 6 p.m. Our awesome yogi, Sarah, is back at it. So jump in tomorrow, start the week out right. Work of the People, Tuesday, 4 p.m., Zoom. And my gosh, guys, we have some work to do. We've got Advent, which we're in now, technically, officially, the first Sunday of Advent. If you have no idea what that means, totally fine. We don't assume fluency in Bible, spirituality, or church language. So we're going to talk a lot about Advent tonight. Stand by. After Advent, we've got Christmas. Advent leads up to Christmas, if you didn't know that. Then in the new year, we say these things all the time. God is love, school of love, practice love. But what does that mean? We use this word love as if we all understand what that means. We're going to figure that out in January, a series of sermons and reflections and conversations about how we mean love when we say it and how we practice it in a school of love. And then, because we'll just be getting warmed up, we're going to attempt to tackle this pesky little problem of neoliberal free market capitalism and the problem it wreaks on anything at all like the kingdom of God. Neighborliness, the common good, grace, and making any logical sense of the message of Jesus of Nazareth. And if we still exist after all of that, what else might we get into? You should help figure that out. Come along to Work of the People Tuesdays at 4. And it may be that if you get inspired, like some of our friends, just a few examples, Ian, Baylor, Peter, Aaron, Kathy, Caitlin, Andy, David, Dave, Katie, and most recently Heather, maybe you'll even get inspired to write a sermon also. So come along to Work of the People Tuesdays at 4. It's really, really pretty great. There's awesome people there. We'd love for you to be there. And then as always, Thursday, 5:30, Collective Cares. This is our LGBTQ plus safe zone and ally community, our meetup. Dan Hensley is on the Facebook chats, so make sure you connect with him if you're interested. He'll share some info on what's going on this week. Honest Advent, we're here. If you saw some of the cool unboxing video that we got to share a couple days ago, you know that the gallery is going in. Honest Advent, we've got this gallery the entire month of December coming up. And one of the things we tried to figure out is if we can't have big gatherings, if we can't have Christmas Eve like we would like to, if we can't have the togetherness in the way we desire because of the pandemic, how can we invite people to have an Advent experience, a Christmas experience, a holiday experience in a safe way? And so this is our answer, this gallery. So we're going to be meeting here for those of you who are wanting to be helpful in that. We don't know exactly the time yet, stand by, but Tuesday at some point, Tuesday afternoon, we'll all be gathering here safely in the theater to go through protocols and stuff like that, hosting, preview of the exhibit if you're working it, guides who are going to help lead tours. So far, we're only able to offer this low tech, meaning first come, first serve, and when we reach capacity in the room, we'll form a formal queue out the front door under the awning. It will be distanced, it will be masked, it will be monitored, it will be temp checked, it will be personally hosted by us. We've got a great safety plan put together by Wendy Martin, who's one of our great nurses, Jim Kane, who runs the trustees. Now, I've been doing some informal research the last few months in trying to figure out how are the organizations that are doing this best handling the shift in their gathering protocols due to the pandemic? And so in the last 6 months, I've had the opportunity to do some really cool stuff, everywhere from the Georgia Aquarium to Universal Studios to Stone Summit, which is one of the largest rock climbing gyms in the Southeast. I've gotten to visit a couple of national parks. And here's what I've learned. And this is, I'm not an expert. I didn't write an article about this. This is what I observed. Success in these places was much less dependent on physical collateral. And what I mean is like sanitizer stations and signage and lines, and these are all very important, they're necessary. But the presence, what I learned is the presence of calm, authoritative, knowledgeable, and friendly guides who are there just to help direct, to help answer questions, to help remind guests what the safest way is for them to have this experience, that seems to be the key. This is where we need your help. I mean, guys, this is who Collective is. Have we not been waiting for this? Not even like in the pandemic, but for the entire year and a half or two before that. Hospitality, this is what we do, all right? And look, I don't want to get into this because I know in some sense this is me sort of knocking what Collective is all the time. But in an exciting sense, we finally have something amazing to share with our community. We have a space and a safe way to do it, and we can give it away for free. And there are tons of opportunities to enjoy it. Can you guys hear me in there? Is this thing on? Check, check. What I'm trying to say is, in a sense, and I don't want us to get too excited, we're kind of back. We're kind of back in a way, but easy does it. We're back, but the COVID numbers are spiking. And sure, vaccines and treatments are on the way, absolutely. But it is, as it ever was, darkest before the dawn, and we know that in an abundance of precaution, we know that that means that it is now more dangerous than ever to get together. And we know that if we can get together safely, that it's also incredibly dangerous for us not to get together. We've been having these conversations that the ability to gather in person, if we can do it safely, is such an important piece of our communal bond, of our mental health, of all these other things. So we're going to make our attempts, and we want you guys to be involved. There will be more specifics tomorrow. I'll be spending a couple hours on Facebook getting these all built out, all these events, so you'll be able to subscribe to them, you'll be able to get in, you'll be able to register if you want to do that. So I want you to adjust your expectations. It's going to be a minute before this is seamless, but we want you to know that where we're headed is also an attempt to return to a hybrid of in-person and online liturgy. And so hopefully, maybe as soon as next week, if not the week after, you will be able to register for a limited seat. You could either sit alone, you could sit in a cluster with a group of friends, or anyone sort of in your exposure cluster, your friend group or family group who you're regularly with and exposed to. We also hope in the next 10 days to release registration for Christmas Eve services, multiple opportunities on the 24th. So all of this stuff is coming. And if you're listening to that and going, my God, this sounds so weird compared to the way we usually do Advent and Christmas, yes, we understand that. We understand that this was always going to be a different year. We're also tremendously excited. I mean, you guys, I don't want to give away too much, but I can't wait for you to be in the room. I don't even honestly want to give you a preview because I think you're going to be blown away when you come and experience this. So all that being said, thank you guys so much for being here with us online. Thanks for joining us live for so many of you who are. Hey, Hyro, great to see you. Love that you're in with us. Your presence makes us who we are. Thank you for being present with us. Welcome. Freddie, give us the community statement.
We value highly the metaphor of journey. We are different people from different places and backgrounds, and we've traveled different paths. We represent an intergenerational community, and we've traveled different paths. So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us, next to us, or in conversation with us. We challenge ourselves to be sensitive, knowing this community includes a diverse group of people from lifelong followers of Jesus to people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist. We strive to avoid offense, ask good questions, articulate and explain our responses. We don't assume fluency in Bible, spirituality, or church language because we believe the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity. So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. All right, I want to pause for just a quick second and say a word about hospitality because we're transitioning from 3 weeks post, what would we call it? I guess an election, to put it mildly, but we're 3 weeks out from whatever that was that we've just endured. And we've made an attempt in the last few weeks to say very clearly that we know that Collective is a progressive Christian church, and we know that if you find yourselves having voted for Trump, having different theological convictions, and yet still wondering if you belong in the community of faith, we want you to know that you do here. We may totally disagree with you politically. We may have things about your perspectives we don't like, and probably vice versa, and there's space. And I wanted to be clear about that, especially as we enter Advent, because I think sometimes when we say things like God with us, we tend to mean it like God with us. And we want to be clear that what we're talking about is God with us, and that you are a part of us. Now we know, and we would say, Collective is for anyone. We also know it's not for everyone. So also no pressure if it's not your thing, totally cool. But we want you to make sure that you understand that as far as we're concerned, you're welcome. That the table is open to you, that the Spirit is open to you. But I wanted to add this level of clarity because I saw this, somebody posted this that I really respect this week. And I thought it clarified so much, especially coming after the community statement, what it is that we mean when we talk about making space like this. So he said this, he said, sometimes people use respect to mean treating someone like a person. And sometimes they use the word respect to mean treating someone like an authority. And sometimes people who are used to being treated like an authority say, if you won't respect me, I won't respect you. And they mean, if you won't treat me like an authority, I won't treat you like a person. And they think they're being fair, but they aren't. And I want us to address that. What we're saying is, whoever you are and wherever you come from, we respect you as a person, and we don't expect you to be an authority. Per the community statement. We don't assume fluency in Bible, spirituality, or church language, and we ask that you only in return come and respect us as people. And we also don't need to or claim any authority. This is that kind of practical life in purple that we're going for. Humility. We're not authorities, we're people. Heather has done it again. This sort of, she said I wrote something. It turned out to be another staggeringly beautiful sermon. And I want to say that just like the images on the walls that you're going to see when you come into the gallery this week, a good sermon is art. And Heather has this really neat expression of humility and vulnerability, and for me, the hope that I find in not being the expert, and not being the authority, and yet still choosing to move forward in faith. So Heather, would you lead us gently into this Advent season?
Sure, thank you, Ben.
Absolutely.
So, Advent. So for thousands of years, there was the humor model of medicine. So the body contained 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And in a healthy person, these 4 humors were in balance. When an imbalance occurred, the person became sick. Medical treatment for centuries entailed rebalancing these humors. Sometimes this involved using medicinal plants. Other treatments involved things like bloodletting with cuts or with leeches. Sometimes the treatments worked. Oftentimes they did not. When the treatments worked, it reinforced the humoral theory. Now, Hippocrates, who is regarded as the father of medicine, and his oath is still sworn by many physicians even today, believed in the humoral theory of medicine. Most people nowadays dismiss the humoral theory of medicine. Modern science has better explanations for disease, and the treatments are infinitely safer and more effective. Humoral medicine wasn't wrong, it was just incomplete. Modern medicine still looks at the chemical composition of the body, and many illnesses are the result of chemical imbalances. Diabetes, for example, results from lack of insulin to regulate sugar. Many mental illnesses are the result of chemical imbalances in brain chemicals. The difference is that we're now aware of thousands of different substances in the body, not just the 4 humors. So, these thousands and thousands of chemicals need to be in balance to maintain good health. Some of the medicinal plants that were used to treat the humors actually became foundation for some of our modern pharmaceuticals. And even leeches and maggots are FDA approved as safe and effective treatments for some conditions. So humoral medicine was a working model, a way of looking at the world that we did not completely understand, but a way that worked up to a point. It was a starting point to treat illness and try and reduce suffering. It was not the truth, but a way of describing what we observed based on the best knowledge at the time, in a way that we could use to try and do good. It was a scientific advance over what came before, demons and other supernatural spirits, and it represented a small step in the continuing journey of our understanding that was to become what we now call science. We use many models today to explain and describe our world. Models don't have to be the truth to be useful and effective. Our brains have even evolved to create working models of our world that enable us to survive and to manage our day-to-day lives. In elementary school, children learn about objects being solid, liquid, or gas, animal, vegetable, or mineral. Then in high school, we teach that matter is made of atoms and molecules, and living things are complex combinations of these chemicals that can be categorized into groups far wider than just animal and vegetable. Then we go on to college and we learn that it's even more complex still. Atoms are made of a range of subatomic particles that are both energy and matter at the same time, existing in one place, but in multiple places at the same time. Concepts that are really impossible to visualize for most and can only really be described using higher mathematics. Our brains create the concept of up and down. All but the most conspiratorial outliers know that the Earth is a globe whizzing through space in orbit of a moderately sized star. When we look at a conventional globe, a conventional northern hemisphere-centric model of a globe, we in Florida, we're about 3/4 of the way down one side. Australians are hanging off the bottom somewhere. But that's not the model that we use in our daily lives. We model our environment as being mostly flat, with the ground at our feet, the sky above. When we drop something, it falls to the ground. We walk around the world upright. We don't walk around like we're on the side, or Australians don't walk around hanging on to the bottom. Our model of the world is a flat one, and it works pretty well. We know it's not really the truth, but that doesn't matter. The model works, and no one thinks of us as heretics or truth deniers as we go about our daily, flat, up and down business. Now, those lucky enough to travel into space get to experience the truth. There is no up or down. It's merely a construct our brains make to function in a gravity environment. In space, the right way up is just whichever way you happen to be oriented at the time. When an astronaut returns to Earth, there's a short adjustment period, then their perception of up and down returns to normal. But no astronaut then goes around preaching that we're all fools, that up and down are false, and we need to embrace the truth and shed our old ideas. Because up and down works. In our daily lives, the truths of higher physics or the reality of our place in space are of little import. A rock is hard, and it hurts if we throw it at someone. If we drop it on our foot, it falls down, and it hurts. The fact that it's mostly empty space between very, very small molecules is irrelevant. We pour drinks into a glass because if we don't, they end up all over the floor. We take no notice of the gas surrounding us. This room is full of gas. It's not an empty room, but we don't think of it like that. It's just open air and open space for us to enjoy. Plants are pretty to look at, and they smell good, or they provide a delicious meal. The models of the world around us that we use in day in and day out, are much closer to those models that we learned as children in elementary school than those modeled by our sharpest mind. And this is okay. This works for us. Now, the truth is important, and as we increase our knowledge, we make the world a better place for all of us. Our scientists create medical miracles. Our engineers make our lives safer and easier. But for most of us, most of the time, a rock is a rock, and a glass of water is a glass of water. The model we choose to use is the one that works best for us. Unless we're doing scientific research, the cutting edge of truth, of matter, of biology, of taxonomy, are just distractions. A tomato tastes good, whether it's a fruit or whether it's a vegetable. As we enter into the season of Advent, we're going to see many models of our faith. The baby in the manger, donkeys and wise men. We'll reflect on the concept of Christ as divine, becoming, at the same time, fully human. A fully human, helpless baby. We'll talk about Mary as the mother of God, an unmarried mother giving birth in a barn in Iron Age Palestine. We will go further and reflect on Christ's message of selflessness and giving as we gather gifts for our family and friends. We will think about the power of God and the power of government as we read about Herod's grisly plan and the escape to Egypt. We will hear stories of angels proclaiming the good news to the shepherds. We will sing carols and decorate our nativity scenes. We will decorate trees and fill our homes with the scents of pine, ancient pine forests and log fires. The season is filled with stories. Stories of Christ's advent and birth. Stories of warmth and renewal, of beginnings and rememberings. Some of them may be true. Others may not. At Collective, we strive to ask good questions. Sometimes the answers are difficult and force us to think critically about our faith. Matthew's Gospel is the one that contains what most of us regard as the Christmas story. Matthew's Gospel was written a generation after the crucifixion, and according to biblical scholars, probably not even by Matthew. It was common in biblical times for writers to ascribe their work to revered authority figures to increase their credibility. So it's highly unlikely that the writer was around at Jesus' birth, and doubtful that he even knew Jesus. It's possible that he wrote the story to illustrate the divinity of Christ. Some biblical scholars believe that he was a scholar of Jewish law who knew how to make the story fit with the Old Testament prophecies. Of course, it's also possible, as some believe, that the Holy Spirit guided the biblical authors and that the narrative is a true and historical record. But for now, this must be a matter of faith, because we don't yet have the ability to determine this either way. Just as we don't disregard up and down just because we've learned more information about it, we should not be afraid to embrace the ongoing scrutiny of Scripture. More knowledge does not diminish the meaning and power of the message. Let me say that again. More knowledge does not diminish the meaning and power of the message. Rather, it gives us a deeper understanding of the context of the time that it was written. Just as the physician takes the best bits of ancient medicine and uses them to make life better for all, so we can embrace the message of Jesus to make our world a better place. So, this Advent, read the story. Embrace the wonder of the virgin birth. Rejoice at the miracle of God, fully divine, lying helpless in a manger, fully human. Wonder at the joy brought by the angels to the shepherds. Imagine the pilgrimage of the Magi, guided by the star. Look up into the night sky and ask where that star is guiding you. Open your hearts to the wonderful message of Jesus to come, a message not just for Christianity, but for humanity. And reflect on what you can do to be that message. Put up your tree, decorate your nativity scene, give and receive gifts. Proclaim the good news. Emmanuel, God with us. God with all of us. Whatever your working model of God might be. And eat the tomato. It's a delicious fruit and it's good for you. Grace and peace.
Heather, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Guys, what a gift. With that, we're going to give us some time to sit. As we do, we're going to sit silently. We've got a great drone meditation over the river if you want to use that as sort of a helpful tool for you to conceive of that perspective, that inner perspective, to call us to our own attention. I love that the piece of art that's above our heads is the cosmic baby calling us to our own attention. So as we sit silently for a few minutes, please let these words that Heather shared, this invitation into this season, let them wash over you. Use this time to reconnect with your breath, to find your center, and we'll sit silently together for about 3 minutes. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lowly exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, thou rod of Jesse, free thine own from Satan's tyranny. From depths of hell thy people save, and give them victory o'er the grave. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, desire of nations, bind all peoples in one heart and mind. Bid envy, strife, and quarrel cease, and be thyself our King of peace. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come, thou day spring, come and cheer all peoples by thine advent here. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and death's dark shadows put to flight. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Sing it if you know it at home. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. All right, friends, it is Advent. The season leading up to Christmas. You've heard this great intro from Heather. Thanks again to Heather, who's just off camera now. Advent's the moment before the moment. Welcome, Kenny. I should have said that too. We got this magic trick. So Heather's gone and Kenny's back when you got here. The moment before the moment, the long breath before the plunge, that long second before the ass gets slapped and the baby cries for the first time. That's Advent. If you didn't know, I want to make an unapologetic connection tonight to our relationship with the United Methodist Church, specifically so that I can talk up and celebrate our bishop, Bishop Ken Carter. We're talking tonight about vulnerability. We're talking about honest Advent, which is finding God with us through vulnerability. And so we're going to open tonight with vulnerability. And Bishop Carter wrote this week, and if you've got issues with organized religion, get in line. Me too, right? And so by saying this, I'm not saying that the Methodist Church is perfect or that everything they've done is great. What I'm saying is that what I'm after in this life and in this faith is becoming the kind of person that this man is, and I appreciate what he shared. So I was just moved by how strongly I felt about his leadership. You know, both in these last few years of our conference choosing to address head-on human sexuality and us landing on the right side of history there, and especially his leadership in the pandemic. And as you'd imagine, if you've been on Facebook at all in the last 10 months, you can imagine that he has drawn some harsh criticism. I mean, who hasn't, right? We're now a world of 8 or 9 billion critics, and everyone's got a broadcast desk in their pocket. So we've all got our criticisms. But he wrote this a couple days ago, I guess he wrote it yesterday, as an example of, I think it's a great example of vulnerability. It's the kind of thing I hope to emulate, and it makes me feel vulnerable actually as it opens, which is part of why it was so moving to me. And so I want to offer these words, his words, and we'll conclude with the lighting of our Advent candle. We'll talk a little bit about our care package. But he says this, he opens like this, 38th Saturday morning of the pandemic, 13.2 million persons in the US have tested positive for COVID, 265,000 persons in the US have died from COVID, 979,020 persons in Florida have contracted COVID, 18,363 persons in Florida have died from COVID. This is the bishop of the state of Florida for the Methodist Church. Biden received 80.1 million votes in the presidency. Trump received 73.9 million votes for the presidency. This is Thanksgiving weekend and the first Sunday of Advent. Pam, his wife, he says, made a roast with potatoes and carrots, squash casserole, macaroni and cheese, and a pound cake. I appreciate so much that he included that because we're talking about incarnation and there is no God without squash casserole, macaroni, and pound cake. So it was delicious. He says, like many families, we connected through FaceTime. I'm not judging or shaming those who got together in larger groups. We're trying to take the long view. And since we have some health liabilities, we're cautious. In this respect, we're blessed that we have work that allows us to do this. And then he downshifts. He says, I want to be a bit more reflective this morning. I've received some feedback that could be generally summarized as, number one, why can't you be a little lighter in your posts? And number two, has the church gotten political? Heather was worried that her Advent intro might offend some people. Have I listened? This is what I love. He says this. So he's got these two criticisms. Why can't he be a little lighter in our posts, right, during a global pandemic and election? And number two, hasn't the church gotten political? This is what makes me so I guess in awe of and connected strongly to this person. In response to his criticisms, he says this, I have listened for the grain of truth that is in this, and there is a truth. And I will try to lean towards it. Talk about humility, talking about being able to see yourself in the criticisms of others. So he goes on, this has been my experience of the pandemic. First, it was avoidable. Second, we really have not had a plan, and we don't have one now at the national or state level. I've known people up close who have died. I can't help but think that they should be alive and here for another 10 or 15 years. The malpractice related to the pandemic has led to small businesses experiencing a much larger span of loss of income. I know of these small businesses owners up close as well. And I know some doctors and nurses who take this very seriously. They tell me they don't want to be heroes. They just want to wear a mask, and they would like to receive the testing that college and pro athletes are getting. And then there is church. Most pastors, he says, I know are in this for the long haul, and they're serving and leading and holding it together, something they thought they'd have to be doing maybe 1 or 2 months rather than 10. For me, this has been heavy, he says. Don't project your own political convictions onto this. Write them on your Facebook page, and I'll read them there and learn from you. My perspective is not the only one. Do you hear the humility in this leadership? He says, and then beyond this, there's racism. The public murders, the voter discrimination, questioning votes in Philadelphia and Detroit. He says, learn about the stories of black persons living in these cities, and it traces to Florida, to Georgia, to Alabama, to Mississippi, the Great Migrations. We have systemically found ways to make it more difficult to vote, more difficult to count the vote, more difficult to certify the vote, and it was really not even close. And it was led in a nonpartisan and transparent way. Conspiracy theories aside, it was not really close. Why is this important to me? For me, it's not about a party winning. What is really important to me, for my friends and family, is that people are treated with equality and fairness. And health is interwoven into all of this. Most of my family and friends I've known have pre-existing conditions. I really do believe that healthcare is a human right. This doesn't make me a socialist. It means I think your healthcare is sacred and should not be a free market commodity. Some things should be free market commodities. Miles Davis, King of Blue, or Netflix, or tickets to the Duke basketball game, or a pound of really good coffee. Your diabetes should not be a pre-existing condition that prevents you from being seen by a doctor. To make a turn here, he says, I thank God that our political and healthcare systems have survived the stress tests of the last year. People were motivated to vote. Many risked their lives to vote. Average people, nurses, respiratory therapists, doctors, they risked their lives to fulfill their callings, to heal the sick. And the scientists have discovered a path to a vaccine in record time. So there is a heaviness to all of this. I'm not judging or shaming anyone who sees it differently. I do look for the light in all of this, and that is my faith. He goes on to say, this is the spiritual practice I'm inviting you into. Whoever you are, wherever you are, you can do this. And he goes into his own background. He says, I didn't grow up in a tradition that observed Advent, and probably a lot of you who connected with Collective haven't, the 4 Sundays before Christmas. But throughout all of my adult ministry, he says, it's been really essential. Many will not be able to be in their churches physically this month, watching a family or 3 single adults walking into the front of a sanctuary to light candles. Research says says that where churches have reinstituted public worship, about 30% of people who have returned. Online worship in many settings has reached more people, more diverse people, younger people, and people searching for a spiritual home. He points out that this is innovation and that that's a part of the spiritual practice. And at that point, he invites us to light candles. How can we light candles at our home, in your apartment, at work, wherever you happen to be, where your sacred space is, and light candles and to ask. And if you ask God, or you ask the universe, or you ask the source of life, wherever you ask for vulnerability and identity, embodiment, love, and presence. These are what we'll explore during Advent. And if you'd like to, you can share those on Facebook, your candle lighting with a hashtag Collective Honest Advent. He invites us to say these words, Bishop Carter, when you light your candle, that God is always more ready to give us these gifts than we are to receive them. Which is, I'll admit, it's hard to say in 2020. And I think it takes an act of faith. He closes by saying, what I'm learning in this season is that my way through the heaviness of 2020 is not to avoid all of this. And that's really basically the sermon, is that Christmas and Advent are about not God saving us out of this. God doesn't rescue us out of 2020, but that God joins us in 2020. We can talk without yelling at each other. We can talk without canceling each other. He says, my way through this is to focus on what Advent and the prayers of the scriptures and the saints can mean for our local churches, for our friends and families, for the grieving and the healing of the loss of the pandemic, for politics, the basic human needs that we all have. That is, finally, he says, the commandment of Jesus to love our neighbor. Be encouraged, stay safe, give thanks, and let's begin a journey to new birth, a new life together. Thanks for the friendship and the connection, Bishop Ken Carter. I wanted you to know who's steering the ship. And again, I'm not afraid to say this, and I think it's one of our greatest strengths, is that the bishop and I don't agree on everything. We don't agree theologically on everything. We don't agree ecclesiologically on everything. But I trust him, and he's got me, and he's got this conference, and I hope that you can hear in his reflection on what has been and what is coming. I hope more than anything that you hear humility, and that you hear that there's a person worthy of following in that leadership. I know I have, and I think his invitation into 2020, into Advent, I don't think I could have put better. So I'm going to let that call us, and then if you saw the unboxing video, was that Saturday? Yeah, I think Saturday we did the unboxing of the Honest Advent gallery. I'm going to do another unboxing. So I think about 18 of you should have either gotten these or you'll be getting them by tomorrow if you're on our main core list and you're local and we could deliver them. We want you to know we aren't choosing against anyone to try and hurt anybody's feelings. We prioritize the children. I hope that will be okay with you. So if you've gotten it delivered, probably you've got kids already. A bunch more will go out tomorrow. Advent care packages. The real key here, hey, Bill Brennan, how's it going? The real key here is that if you don't think you're on that root mailing list and you do want one of these, especially if you're not in town where we can deliver it and you're like, you know what, I need an Advent care package this year, we're happy to send it out to you. You've got to let us know. So you can either do that by emailing admin@wearecollectivechurch.com, or you can put it in the comments right now on Facebook and we'll make sure to send you one. Let me just open this real quick. So what you've got, brilliant wrapping paper. And thanks specifically to Caitlin and to our shares team for assembling these and getting them delivered. So what you're going to do, Heather, I'm going to set the tomato aside for a moment. We'll come back to that. So you didn't necessarily get a plate or a wreath base, but what you're going to get is 5 candles. You've got 3 purple and 1 pink, and then the white Christ candle in the middle. So, and I know this, I'm actually literally right now thinking of how far Dan Hensley is going to take this. This is me. It's a white plate with 5 candles on it, and I know that Collective is full of artists and people who are particularly suited at expressing themselves. Make it yours. Make it yours. The idea is just that you've got an Advent wreath or a candle at least to light with us each week in our liturgy. And so with Bishop Carter's words, I am going to find this lighter and we're going to get to it. First Sunday of Advent. What a strange year, right? Just a strange year. I almost blew it out with my deep, deep exhale. That would have been so 2020. All right, Advent candle number 1, we did it. What do we got? 12 minutes left. Perfect. We're going to wrap this up with just a touch of a toe in the water for Honest Advent. So Honest Advent is it's a website and a book. It's the brainchild of Scott Erickson, who's this amazing artist. He creates resources for the church. Honest Advent is a live 15-piece art gallery here at the Drika Theater, 112 East New York, and it's going to be opening on Thursday. You can get all those details online this week. And I want to work us towards just sort of setting this up, and then I want to show us 3 pieces. Kenny's going to read some text for us, and then we're going to jump over to the Zoom to really discuss. So I'm really just kind of whetting your appetite here. My buddy out in LA, I met through Pete Rollins. His name is Aaron Van Vooris. He shared this quote from a guy named Don Cuppett, and I'm gonna tell you the truth. I don't know who Don Cuppett is. I didn't get to do my research, but I love what he says. He says, "Christmas is the Disneyfication of Christianity." And my friend Aaron goes on to say, "We've romanticized a story that was originally meant as a scathing critique of Caesar and a mockery of the powers that be." That's what Heather was talking about. The nativity story was an ancient equivalent of a political shit posting on Facebook today, right? The nativity was talking garbage about Rome. And then one of Aaron's friends, inspired by his post, adds to it, "They started celebrating Christmas during the reign of Constantine, the first Roman emperor to make Christianity mandatory." I love the European traditions, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but my God, it was already out of control way before Santa started drinking Coca-Cola Classic TM trademark, which I thought was amazing. So if Christmas is the Disneyfication of Christianity, I think Honest Advent has to be the 2020fication of Advent. Meaning Honest Advent is the inevitable conclusion of a year like 2020 in a badass liturgical season like Advent. We get to put them together. We talk about, at Advent and Christmas, and God, all the more this year, not as much about the divinity of Jesus as we do about the humanity of God. And Scott, the author, he says it like this. Exploring the vulnerability of incarnation is really what we're attempting to do. The main idea here is the place where we connect with the message of Jesus, the story of Jesus, the identity of Jesus, the person of Jesus, is through our vulnerability. We can see all throughout the Gospels people connecting with Jesus through their vulnerability, not their strengths. The teacher Nicodemus says, "I don't get it." The powerful Roman centurion doesn't have the power to heal his servant. The sick woman doesn't have the power to heal her own body. Zacchaeus the traitor doesn't know how to get back into his own family. Our starting point is our weakness. The starting point of Advent and of the Christian faith is failure, vulnerability, the places where we aren't enough. The places where we are not doing it right. If this isn't good news, you're not listening. So if we feel, after all of that, if we feel like we can and we should still attempt to prop up the Disney-fied version of some kind of perfect holiday bliss, I don't know what to tell you. You've picked a horrible year to do it, and I think you should let that go. And if we want that lie, more than we want the nasty, raw, very gritty, and human truth, that comes with just a flicker of hope. If we want that lie, even after all the other lies that we've endured this year, again, I don't know what to tell you. I think maybe we just have to wait then for the scales to fall from our eyes. Maybe this is one of those things where it's only for those with ears to hear and with eyes to see. Because this year, guys, God is with us, but it ain't Disney, right? Or at least it's not the typical Disney metaphor. Actually, oddly enough, God is with us, but in 2020, it is Disney. It's layoffs and it's losses at the happiest place on earth. It's messes where there used to be magic. That's Honest Advent. Honest Advent is just an obnoxious motorcycle and a really important part of a sermon. How do we summarize this? God is with us, but it's complicated. Kenny was with us, 6 years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago. The first time that came around, this came up in Advent. Man, this is probably before Freddie was around, maybe before Heather was around. Yeah, God is with us, but it's complicated. I mean, how is that for Honest Advent? If you've got a heartbeat and some dexterity left in your fingers, maybe you want to type amen in the chat. God is with us, but it's complicated. God is with us, and again, not like to rescue us. God is in the shit with us. That's Advent in 2020. That's Honest Advent, but that's also the way Advent always has been. God is with us, but it's complicated. Is it a fruit? Is it a vegetable? Who cares? Is it good? Is the experience good? How is that for Honest Advent? And tonight, we want to just touch on vulnerability. And in vulnerability, I really couldn't summarize it any better than this. Impossibility is the birthplace of possibility. That's how the story starts. Impossibility is the birthplace of possibility. That's how the story starts. There we have it. Advent. God is with us, but it's complicated. And this week, vulnerability. Impossibility is the birthplace of possibility. And I know I'm not going to try and give a sermon on vulnerability because I know that our congregation is full of Brene Brown gurus, and I couldn't do it without you guys being able to do it better. And Heather's already given a great sermon, so I don't need to do that. But I think Jim, this is just, and again, you guys do the preaching for me. Jim sent this incredible example of Honest Advent. He says, I've been thinking more than usual about Advent. The story as I remember it is that things were really messed up. 2020. Romans were taxing and oppressing the people. Jewish clergy were collaborators. Religion had become rule-bound and services were stale. No one was looking after the common man, kind of like our situation today. Because of the Jewish tradition, there was an expectation of a transformational agent who would fix all of this. Some people believed Jesus would be this agent, though he didn't seem to fit the part. He wasn't exactly a fool character, but he did a very, very good job of matching sort of the stock folklore of that transformative agent. So fast forward to today, Jim says, and are we expecting a transformative agent? Is it Joe Biden? What role do we play? What role do we play with or without this agent? I suppose we're to be this agent on a tiny, tiny scale. What gives us hope is that this role is worthwhile. How successful, this is what I love, God, Honest Advent. How successful was Jesus given that we're still in the same boat? I don't know of any other churches that just say that, but I love it. I want to invite you to, in the next few minutes, just consider some images from our Honest Advent gallery. Again, thanks to Scott Erickson, thanks to our sponsors who made this possible. And I want to just offer a couple questions and reflections on these. And I'm going to say this a lot. You're going to hear this all through Advent. If you come in person when I'm here one night, you're going to hear this again. The focus of this Advent season, of this gallery, is not primarily on what we think. The invitation of Honest Advent is not to try to make sense of things. The point of art, the point of really good storytelling, the point of the baby is to inspire us. But it's also to challenge us. It's to challenge us not to settle for making sense of things, right? Which is another way of saying let's force into categories things that defy categories. Instead, what I want to invite us to do is simply to sit with these images and ask how they make us feel. What does it do to you? Where is God in it? and then we'll bring some discussion questions. And especially if you'll join us in just a few minutes over on the Zoom. I want to begin tonight with vulnerability. So Brandon's going to go ahead and throw vulnerability up on the screen, and I'm going to ask Kenny to read it kind of slowly, and we'll just kind of sit and feel free to take a look at this piece just for a few minutes while Kenny reads this, and then we'll move on to another. Kenny, go for it.
This is Psalm 139. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you.
Thanks, Kenny. Brandon, you can leave that up actually for just a second. Scott says at the beginning of the chapter on vulnerability, he says, God came to us, floating in embryonic fluid, slowly forming and taking shape, embedded in the uterine wall of a Middle Eastern woman. It trusted to care for its fragile knitting process. He says all creating is an expression of vulnerability. I feel like Kenny and I have talked about this before. You know when you meet someone and you really want to really like them, but you can't get to know them because it's all good? Like the more you learn about them, it's all good. Like they don't have any skeletons in their closet. They won't share their secrets. You can't get behind any of their shit or their failures. You can't connect with them as people without vulnerability because they're not open to being truly known. And this is essential. Any real connection involves vulnerability. And I just want to reiterate, because I feel like this is so often where Christmas goes off the tracks, this is not a story about salvation from vulnerability, which is so often how it's portrayed. This is sacred presence through vulnerability. Vulnerability is where the action is. It's not the enemy God is saving us from, it's how God is with us. We don't get out of it. Christmas says we finally get it that God is in it. It's not us out, it's that we realize, and Jacob says it like this in Genesis 12, God's been here the whole time. And we're just now awakening to that. Salvation from the pain and suffering and enduring of pregnancy is not by getting rid of the baby, by getting free of it. It's to get through it. It's to get on with it. The only way is to have the baby. The path of formation is to endure the pain and to know beyond beliefs or words that somehow God has been present with us and to us in that vulnerability. Brandon, would you throw motherhood up? And I'm just going to let us consider it for a few minutes silently. Again, I invite you, we won't dwell long just for the sake of time. I invite you to come and sit in the gallery. You could spend hours here, and I hope you will. This image contains so much. But as we look at it, I want us to imagine the vulnerability of first-time experiences. And we've got this image, Eve and Mary, the mother of Jesus. You've got Eve as the first ever mother in the story, right? And you've got Mary as the first-time mother in quite a situation, knocked up by God. Talk about God is with us, but it's complicated. What I ended up thinking as I looked at this picture is, what can we learn from women like this? What can we learn from the courage of women in extremely complicated first-time situations? And that got me thinking, Jesus, guys, it's been 10 months of what have to have been for you and for me, for all of us, just first time after first time after first time. And I learned in recovery, one of the hardest things to stay sober through is doing anything for the first time. Guys, and we've just been doing it nonstop for 10 months. What can we learn from the courage of these women who inherited these incredibly complicated situations and really managed these impossible first-time circumstances with grace? What are your first-time situations in the pandemic? First-time situations post-election? First-time situations going into this holiday season? I promise you there are some. Think about it. Brandon's nodding. He's about to have a kid. And maybe we can be a bit more generous with grace for our own first-time situations. And if we can find grace for ourselves, maybe then even for others. Brandon, would you throw up the final image for tonight, the Annunciation, and we'll wrap it up. Kenny's going to read slowly for us from the Gospel of Luke.
This is Luke 2. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly confused and disturbed at these words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be.
So if you're looking, and you've got to come in to check it out on the wall, full size, but if you're looking at that image for Annunciation, I just wanted to talk about two words because I think this so clearly to me, this image just, not even that it makes sense to me, but this is what I felt when I saw the image. From this text, the words confused and disturbed, right? Mary gets this Annunciation and her response is confusion. And she's disturbed, which again, 2020, feeling vulnerable, confused and disturbed. I borrowed this from somebody I follow on social media, and I didn't attempt to put it in my own words just because I feel like he's got better and fewer words, but I want to say that this is basically my perspective. That what I anticipate, and this is not, God, please, this is just, I'm thinking out loud, so don't quit the church if you don't like my perspective. I'm just thinking this is probably where we're headed and how we see things. We probably at some point in the near future, maybe middle to end of January, are looking at about a 4 to 6 week lockdown. At some point, if we want to save lives, that probably will come with a compulsory mandatory mask policy during that time, which I believe, and again, I've been listening to people, mostly Fauci, I believe to be necessary. And I think hopefully it will be a sufficient sort of counterattack to the virus's advance and surge. Coupled with an economic stimulus package that could keep Americans off the streets, it could be effective if undertaken collectively. Like Korea, Japan, New Zealand, Taiwan, they took these shutdowns in sort of a unifying effort. They did it as a people. Talk about reflecting on vulnerability, guys. Talk about a really painfully honest look at ourselves this Advent season. I believe all that, and I believe this. I believe that we will not do that because that kind of self-limitation, in the words of my friend again, it is beyond the grasp of bratty, individualistic assholes. And he says this, and again, I'm not bashing you guys, I'm inviting us to this is Honest Advent, so I'm just trying to, be vulnerable. I'm trying to tell you guys how I really feel. He summarizes it like this. He says, the virus has found a key human weakness beyond immune deficiency: rugged individualism, America's Achilles heel. I don't know what else to say. Real human vulnerability has to begin with humility. It has to begin with some sense that we need each other and that we actually still have something to learn from one another in this season. I think it's got to begin with the truth that even though things are hard right now, we will be formed during this time either way. We will be formed as people. Part of Advent is inviting us to be formed for the better on purpose. It's inviting us to choose to be formed by some practices and by some community over this season. And that got me thinking, in everything that's so hard, in the things that are so confusing and so disturbing going into Advent and Christmas this year, what's the conversation that you can only have this year because you're in this situation. Because some of those conversations have opened up in ways that you never would have had the opportunity before. What is the conversation that you can have now only because you're in this situation? What parts of your life, and I'm thinking about the last 2 years with Heather, and I'm thinking about the conversations we've had, what parts of your life have you been able to uncover only by finding yourself in this kind of vulnerability? What part of your true self have you come to know for the first time by being in this kind of vulnerability? Confused, disturbed, vulnerable. What unexpected place might God arrive during such a time of unease, of vulnerability? As we come to the open table tonight, I want to offer a Eucharistic invitation to you guys from our patron saint, Mary Oliver. And even though we don't have the bread and the cup up here, I just want you to, maybe you can bring those forward in your mind's eye, or you can put yourself back at this altar when you've been in the room, or however you can to kind of put yourself back in that space. Vulnerability in the Eucharist, body given, bloodshed. In the story of the Eucharist we're given, there is no Kevlar vest, there is no angelic rescue, there is no timely vaccine. In the story of Jesus of Nazareth, his human body is separated from his human blood. And we, the church, are left to determine where God is in this, in that vulnerability. Where is there a good gift? Where's there a good gift in that human frailty? Where's there a good gift in that human failing and faltering and falling? Mary says, not the Madonna, the poet, Mary Oliver, says, there are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind. And much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back. That sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Don't be afraid of its plenty. I'm going to be clear, we're inviting ourselves into vulnerability, not into fear. Don't be afraid of its plenty. She ends with these words, joy is not made to be a crumb. As we consider the Eucharist, as we consider the good gift, as we consider the joy that is not meant to be a crumb, but a feast, let's sit silently for a moment. Freddie's going to come back. We're going to sing our way out of this, and then Kenny's got a benediction for us. Sit silently for a moment and consider these words, and then we'll sing together. Go for it. The streets are filled with laughter and light, and the music of the season, and the merchants' windows are all bright with the faces of the children and their families. They hurry into their homes while the sky darkens and freezes, We'll be gathering around our hearths and tables, giving thanks for God's graces and the birth of the rebel Jesus. Well, they call him by the Prince of Peace, and they call him by the Savior, and they pray to him upon their seas and in every bold endeavor, and they fill their churches with their pride and gold as their faith in him increases. But they've turned the nature that I worship in from a temple to a robber's den. In the words of the rebel Jesus, well, we guard our world with locks and guns. We guard our fine possessions. And once a year when Christmas comes, we give to our relations. And perhaps we give a little to the poor, if the generosity should seize us. But if any one of us should interfere in the business of why there are poor, they get the same as the rebel Jesus. Pardon me if I have seemed to take the tone of judgment, for I've no wish to come between this day and your enjoyment. In the life of hardship and of earthly toil, there's a need for anything that frees us. So I bid you pleasure and I bid you cheer from the heathen and the pagan, on the side of the rebel Jesus. Thanks a bunch, Fred. Take it away, Kenny.
You can sign up for the weekly or give to Collective at wearecollectivechurch.com. If you'd like to get to know us a bit better, you can join us on the Zoom right after this. If you want more info on weekly community groups, you can check on Facebook or you can email info@wearecollectivechurch.com. Thanks for being with us online. Your presence makes us who we are. Our benediction this evening is from St. Teresa of Avila. Christ has no body but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks, compassion on this world. Your eyes are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet, yours are the eyes, you are his body. Christ has no body now but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks compassion on this world. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. Christ then is infinitely vulnerable because I am. We are the temporal, contingent, dependent, mortal, frail human being. This is vulnerable heartbeat of the human, cosmic, mortal body of Christ. And that is wholeness, holy incarnation. God in our vulnerability. God is with us, and it's complicated.
Let's bring our hands together as a symbol of our intention. First to our foreheads for clarity of thought, then to our lips for clarity of speech, and to our hearts for clarity of action. So that in all that we say and do in this Advent season, love would be our first thought, our first word, and our first deed. Grace and peace. We would love to see your beautiful faces on the Zoom right now. Grace and peace. We'll see you over there.